Hello and welcome to the Ending Body Burnout Show. We are your hosts, Chris and Philly, co-founders of a multi-award-winning functional medicine practice, serving busy people with energy, mood, and gut issues.
While busyness, addictive doing, people-pleasing, and perfectionism might be the norm, it's not normal, and it's a major contributor to health issues.
Our goal with this show is to give you a holistic root cause approach to healing your body so that you don't have to continue doctor or diet hopping or popping a gazillion supplements hoping something might stick.
So get ready to heal your body, get your spark back, deeply connect with yourself, and step into the life of your dreams.
Let's dive in.
Hello, it's Philly here on the Ending Body Burnout Show. Chris and I just had the most beautiful, inspiring conversation with Melissa Marsden, who is one of our clients inside the Ending Body Burnout Method. She's been working with us for, I think, almost a year now. She is a phenomenal woman. The woman that we interviewed today is not just very, vastly different from the woman that entered our practice. So Mel came to us because she was feeling burnt out. She has and still does a very successful business and successful in her profession in her own right. But she'd gone through many years of hustle and grinding, all driven from deep dysfunctional fear about herself being insignificant, which is what she uncovers inside the method. And, that led to patterns of saying yes all the time and putting others' needs before herself. And we dive into all of that. But essentially, her body spoke to her and said enough is enough. So this culminated after many years of running these patterns, some pretty significant traumatic events that occurred as well. And she just had her third baby 2 years ago, which was lovely with the pregnancy and breastfeeding. But the moment she stopped breastfeeding, all her symptoms really flared up, including really severe bloating, constipation, weight gain increased, and feeling anxious, overwhelmed, and exhausted. So this is a beautiful conversation. What I love about Mel was, even though she came in with her struggles and her challenges and her overwhelm, she had in her mind that 2024 was the year she was going to get well. It was the year of fix Mel. Now, we use the word fix with little exclamation marks because now she knows, working with us, that, she never was broken. But it really was the year that she resolved her health issues and herself as a person and really connected with herself. And so she went all in with the Ending Body Burnout Method, did all the protocols that I prescribed her, including the SIBO elemental diet, which is 2-week, no food and shakes. But she also straddled other modalities, other practices to really make the most out of her healing journey and to get the most effective results. So we dive into all of that. She is now living with so much more spaciousness, so much more freedom within herself. We tap into her business story as well. So she's an amazing woman. Actually, I'll read her bio in a seckie. But yeah, she's phenomenal in what she does in her profession, helping other corporate teams create an environment that helps their team members thrive. But since doing her own healing, she's now integrating her own healing journey to help other business women create businesses that are in alignment, that create work-life balance in their life, and also essentially prevent and heal from burnout. So this is like a beautiful full circle story. Okay, so just a bit about Melissa. So Melissa Marsden is a workplace strategist, business coach, author, and podcast host dedicated to creating supportive and dynamic work environments. With over 12 years leading community, Mel guides corporate and government teams in designing workplaces that align with their values and enhance human potential. She's the author of The Next Workplace and hosts Work Life by Design, one of Australia's top workplace podcasts. Mel's approach blends strategy with heart, innovation with intuition, and ambition with alignment. She also coaches women entrepreneurs to build businesses that reflect their values and lifestyle, avoiding burnout. As a multi-award winning entrepreneur and Telstra Business Women's Awards finalist, Mel's passion for business and innovation is matched by her commitment to empowering others. And I know that you will feel that passion just radiate through, whether you're watching on YouTube, through the video, or audio if you're watching and listening to an audio podcast. So we'll dive into Mel's story now. Well, actually in a moment. If you really resonate with Mel's story and the work that she did inside the Ending Body Burnout Method, as we holistically help to support her physical body and her metaphysical parts of her for full healing. The doors open to our Ending Body Burnout Method in May. So in the show notes, I'll pop in the show notes the link where you can pop your name on the wait list. Benefit of having your name on the wait list is you get early access, so you can save a spot. We only have limited spaces because our program does include one-on-one support. But also you'll get access to over $500 worth of early bird bonuses if you sign up in the early bird period, and this is exclusive to the waitlisters. And also, if you don't want to wait to May and you're super keen to get started with the first step, at the end of the podcast, Mel talks about the Connect the Dots initial consult. So that is a first step that you can start with before the doors open. And this is where you get to spend 90 minutes with me. I look over all of your case history, your health history, and really start connecting the dots as to what's going on, what's happening at a body systems level, where are the imbalances, and what are the deeper root causes, and how can we move forward with some lab testing to help start the healing journey. So I'll pop the Connect the Dots link down in the show notes as well if you would like to book in for a Connect the Dots, and the doors, or my calendar for that, is open. So I've got some spaces available maybe in March. I'm not sure if there'll be any in March by the time this goes live, but definitely there'll be some spots in April. All right, let's get into today's episode.
Alrighty, well, welcome to this episode of the Ending Body Burnout Show. We have the lovely Mel Marsden, and Mel has worked with us in the past, and she's got a wonderful story. And I can't wait to ask some questions, dig in, hear a little bit from Mel around your journey, what you do for your work as well, for your business, and yeah, I reckon we get this show on the road, hey?
Yeah, awesome. Let's dive in first just so people can get to know you, who you are, what you do, and we'll also dig into what you do inside of your business as well, because there's a lot of links with what you do in your business, and also like preventing burnout and supporting people's health and longevity and performance.
Yeah, it is. So thanks for having me, guys. So to start with, I suppose I'm a mum. I have 3 kids, a 2-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 14-year-old. So quite a bit of a spread. And I run a workplace strategy, design advisory, and change leadership studio called Community. So what all that means is we work with organisations to really just help them optimise their workplaces so that they can create really great employee experiences for their people. So we kind of come in and help them unpack their strategy, their values, their purpose, where they're going as an organisation, how they want to work, and then we help them create an environment that tells their brand story, really connects with their people, and communicates their vision for their organisation through their space. And then we help their people on board back into that space. So to learn how to use that space, to work within that, how to work optimally in those environments, and make the most out of it. So yeah, that's what we do, and that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, that's so cool. So with the environments, because I always say you can't heal in a toxic environment. Well, also too, like from a workplace perspective, you can't work optimally if your environment is toxic. So when you talk about environment, are you talking about the physical, like what it looks like, what it feels like, the ergonomics? What specifically do you do there?
Yeah, so It's a bit twofold. So we look at it from an environmental perspective. So yeah, all of the materials, finishes, the way that it's laid out, the way that people can move through the space. So from, I suppose, from a workplace wellness perspective, the things that we're being able to influence there is indoor air quality, because that really has a big impact on people's productivity and performance and their general wellness in general.
Can I just say,
Therm-
before we hit record, Chris said, I just took my nose strip off and now I can't breathe as good. So like air is important, people.
Air is very important. And particularly in a lot of commercial buildings, which is where I work in, is the air conditioning systems in those buildings can be, tens of years old, decades old.
Yeah.
And the quality of air that's coming in and the amount of fresh air that's coming into those environments isn't always up to the great standard. So being really mindful about how we look at that and how we support that. Thermal quality is also really important. So I don't know how many people have complained about the air conditioning being too hot or too cold, and everybody has a different expectation of what that looks like for their own body. So looking at that, and then also just acoustics is another huge one. The amount of noise that is in the environment, and don't need to talk about how many people hate open plan workplaces and the rap that that's got, but just being really mindful about the way that noise moves and travels through a space and how that can impact on the users in that environment as well.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's things that I would imagine when you come into an organization that they haven't put any thought into any of that at all, which is why they then hire you.
Yeah, and a lot of the time they don't know that they need to hire us in the first place, because typically when an organization gets to a point where they need a new workplace and the usual catalyst is the lease is expiring, is that they just go and hire a designer or an architect, and they want to start putting pen to paper and drawing, desks on a plan. Whereas we take a very different approach, as we come in and we really want to understand what the business is, who the people are, how they work, what are they trying to achieve, what's their purpose, what's their vision, who are they as an organization, what's their story, so that we can really create an environment that responds and reflects them and their uniqueness, and create an environment that really connects and attracts the right people to the organization. Because I think that's the other element that gets overlooked quite a lot. And, you talk about toxic environments, is that the bit that I see missing is if we don't have that really strong connection to purpose, that why, like, why am I here? Why am I working for this organization? How does this fit with me? There's that lack of meaningful work in what we do. And I think that also contributes to people's stress and burnout in a workplace environment. And the other piece is, because of that, they're also missing that sense of belonging. And so they're kind of just adapting to fit in. And we do, disc profiling and those sorts of things. And you talk about your adaptive state, that's taking energy, it's draining you. And people are, often, particularly in, corporate workplaces, are adapting their behavior to fit in because that's what's expected of them, because the misalignment's there in terms of who they've chosen to work for and how that fits with their own personal values and purpose.
Yeah. I remember when you started working through our Ending Body Burnout Method, and you got to the part that was called desired state, which is all about your vision and your why. And you're like, oh yeah, I'm all over that part. This is good.
Yeah,
can you got that nailed? I love that too. So what does that practically look like in terms of mapping out the values and the vision and the purpose, and then how that flows into the physical environment?
Yeah, so we start with leadership interviews, engagement with employees, surveys, to really kind of unpack, because what we often find too is what an organization will say their purpose is or their vision is very different when it's communicated from the words of the people. And it's about finding that thread and then really unpacking that. And then what we do with that is we reflect that back to the organization, and that then becomes a platform for them to do some more internal culture work as well, because all of this goes hand in hand. A workplace is actually a cultural transformation. It's not just a new fit out or a construction project. That's the biggest shift that we're trying to get people to understand, is that however you create your environment is really going to lead your business. So being really clear about that. So getting that right at the beginning is really important. And then once we understand that, values are often things that we see written in documents or stuck on walls. What we go in to look for is, well, what is the behavior that we want to see sitting underneath that value? If I am, behaving in a way that is in alignment with that value, what am I going to be doing in this business? And when we can understand that, then I can actually start to influence the space to create more of that behavior. So if we want to see people collaborating and that becomes a strong value, we really want people working together, sharing ideas, we need to create spaces that encourage that behavior. So stand up environments with, bar stools and collaboration tools so that they can share documents on a screen, or they can whiteboard things out and they can have more robust conversations. So again, thinking about where these are positioned from an acoustics perspective to encourage that behavior. So these are the ways that once we understand where the organization's going, what they want to do, and what's important to them, finding out those behaviors, we can then start to shape the workplace to really encourage more of that behavior in those environments.
It's so cool. Does this apply to virtual workspaces or not really?
It can. The way that I like to look at it from a virtual perspective is there's a great book by Priya Parker called The Art of Gathering. And so she's basically setting up a mental framework around how we're going to come together and how we're going to gather. And I think those sorts of models are really important, because what we're doing is we're giving people these subconscious cues around what's okay and what's not okay in terms of how we want you to show up and how we want you to contribute and how you want people to behave in these spaces. So I think that's where it comes into play from a virtual perspective as well.
Yeah, that's so cool. Have you seen a link with burnout and poor setups?
It's a bit difficult to kind of get into that, the depth of that, but we definitely see people who are experiencing back injuries and pains because ergonomics aren't set up great. People going on stress leave because of sick building syndrome and poor air quality. So there's a direct correlation there, and that's why we've got organisations such as Green Star Building Council. You've also got well workplaces and the well building standard. So there are organizations that are creating frameworks on how we can create spaces that are much healthier for our people to be in. And the things that I probably see the most are where we get a lot of people not really performing well or not feeling well in the workplace is because they haven't got a variety of spaces to be able to support all of the different types of needs that they have when they're at work. I talk about it. Typically, you've got really like three typologies in an office. You've got an office, a meeting room, and a workstation. And many organizations, when I go in there, have only got these three options for people. But we need so much more than that. We need places where we can decompress. We need places where we can relax. We need places where we can socialize and connect. I've been into organizations and they go, oh, we don't need a kitchen or, a tea point place for our staff. They just eat at their desk. And so all of these little things are giving people subconscious cues around what we want you to do when you get here. And even the way that you move and flow through a space, the sequence of events that you go through when you enter an environment, all of that is setting up your subconscious scaffolding around how you are expected to show up and perform and behave and operate in these spaces. So many things that can influence the way that we, feel in a space, and therefore the way that we, want to do things.
It's around safety too. Like, you have been using the word subconscious a lot, which we have a shared language with that as well in our practice. And so if it's like, there's no kitchen, okay, where do I eat? At my desk. So therefore it's actually not even safe to eat. It's not safe to eat. It's not safe to have that time out to go and rest and digest and eat the food and then come back to work. That's super interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting you say it like that, because that's absolutely true. And because also, whether or not there is a culture of taking that time out to take lunch or, to look after yourself when you're at work, to exercise. It's all those little mindset pieces about, is it okay for me to do those things here or not? And it's all cued by the environment. And so one of the things in the well building standard is that they actually look at what kind of healthy eating options are actually around the location of the building, and what fitness amenities and well-being amenities are in and around the building. So again, giving those people that access to it in an easily accessible way, but also then that permission piece I think is really important as well.
Yeah, like it's invited here and it's safe to do that
Yeah.
here. Safe to go to the toilet. There's a toilet in our building.
I remember working for Australia Post before we got married. Just after we got married in Strawberry Hills in Sydney, and the gym, the corporate gym, was encouraged to be used. However, not during work hours, and it was locked after hours.
Oh, that's mixed
It was
messaging.
so weird. Yeah. It was all.
So when did you use it? It was before work only?
I never did.
Well, you couldn't.
Yeah.
Lunchtime probably.
Yeah, it was really crazy.
Wow.
It was decent, but they put a lot of, a decent amount of taxpayer money into it.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting too. It's like, is that just for face?
Tick
Like,
a box.
is that really to
Tokenistic.
encourage a culture, or is it just to be like, we have a gym, come and work here, but you can't use it?
Yeah. It's a hook, but yeah, it's not followed through on.
Yeah. Okay, let's switch gears. So you have been on a massive journey this last, how long has it been? Year? 9 months?
Yeah, just over a year.
Yeah.
Just over a year.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. And we'll circle back to like how this has fed into your business at the end as well. Because I think I've just loved watching your journey, not just your health and healing journey, but how it's just rippled into every facet of your life in terms of the important areas. So you, can we go back to when your body started showing signs of body burnout? And maybe that might even be like right back as a kid, or, wherever feels fitting to start unfolding your own health journey story.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'd probably say like the main thing, the warning bells and the alarms started going off probably about 2 years ago. And I was just experiencing some really bad stomach issues, like constant cramping, bloating. And that was kind of like the first bit that I was going, oh, there's something not entirely right here. And as that progressed, I started to get, I was gaining weight and I just was feeling really crappy. And what had happened is I had a baby in 2022 in May, a little boy, and I had been breastfeeding him for 9 months. And when I stopped breastfeeding him, I just kind of started to gain all this weight. So while I'm breastfeeding, pregnancy and breastfeeding are like my two favorite things to be, because I feel so much energy. And when I'm breastfeeding, like the weight just like disappears and I'm like super skinny and it's amazing. And then he had dairy intolerance. So I was dairy free for sort of the 9 months that I was breastfeeding him. And then once I sort of stopped that and I started eating like all the food again, I started to get all this really bad sort of stomach stuff. And I went to the doctor and they said, oh, there's nothing wrong with you. You're fine. Off you go home. And then another doctor said to me, oh, isn't it really cool how, when you're breastfeeding, you have these microbiomes and your hormones work this way. He said, it's a real shame we can't replicate that, but off you go, home you go.
Yep.
And so, yeah, it was just a real journey there. And only through working with you guys and really sort of digging back in and thinking about this, like I have had gut issues and gut problems and sort of constipation issues since I was a young child. And it's sort of flared up and down throughout all different parts of my life. And I've never really thought anything of it because for me, that's normal. That's how things were.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, we kind of got to that point there. And, throughout that period of time too, I've also got endometriosis and was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, underactive thyroid. So I've always had like these sorts of autoimmune type things that have been cropping up and popping up throughout my life. And it was about 10 years ago, I also got a pretty nasty parasite and had to go on a really harsh round of antibiotics. And I think that completely knocked my entire gut health system. I was diagnosed with IBS after that, and then, followed the FODMAP diet for a while and had sort of different amounts of success with that. But and then that all kind of led me to that point where I was just completely overwhelmed. I was emotional all the time. I had like this fog. I just felt like this deep, in hindsight, I may have even been possibly in a state of depression. Like it just all felt really hard and everything just felt a lot.
Yeah.
And I was talking to a friend and she said, oh my God, I've been doing the same thing. And I've been put onto this person. You need to go and talk to Philly. And that's how we started our
Ta-da!
journey here together. Yeah.
Yeah. I think
So
there was a little
there we go.
triangle with Dr. Ali as well.
Yep.
Who she's been
There
on our
was.
podcast and I've been on
Yes.
hers, and yeah.
Yeah, so they all said, you got to go and talk to Frilly. And I'm like, okay, that's two people have told me now. So here we are. And yeah,
Listen
so that
to the
was
universe.
November 23. We
Yeah.
had that first Connect the Dots call. So
Yeah. I do remember when we first started working with you, and yeah, I mean, whether it was clinical depression or not, it's kind of chalk and cheese. Like the person that I'm talking to now, very different to the woman that came, who, you know, like you had a lot of things going right for you in terms of business and successful woman and an author. But yeah, there was something inside of you that was just like, my body is clearly speaking to me and I don't know why and I need help. And this is actually really crappy feeling like this right now.
Yeah, it was really shitty.
Yeah.
And I was probably feeling like that for a few years, to be honest. And I just didn't really, and I think it got worse. And that feeling was about just like anything that was deeper than surface level emotion, I would be in tears. Like it just, there wasn't that capacity to be able to hold any of that. It just kept coming up and out all the time. And, you know, if you ask my husband, I was cranky and
Dragon mum, dragon wife.
yeah, dragging mum. I yelled at the kids all the time. Like I did all of that. I still yell at them sometimes, but nowhere near as much. But
That is allowed.
you know, it's I just didn't have any capacity, and was just feeling like this overwhelm a lot of the time.
Yeah. Okay. So the first step when we start digging in to like what's going on is let's look at the body systems first, and let's uncover what's happening at a body systems level, because you can't have symptoms, whether it's physical, even like mental, emotional, without there being some sort of physiological imbalance. So are you happy to share what showed up on your lab tests and how you felt and how you made sense of it all?
Yeah. So, well, it took me a while to actually do the lab test, to be honest.
It did actually, didn't it?
February before I did the test. And
can you share why? Because there's lots of other clients, by the way, who might start the journey and then it's like, oh my gosh, 3 months later, I've still got these test kits sitting there. What was happening?
Oh, it was Christmas and you wanted me to do 3 different types of tests, and they required me to do 3 different types of eating protocols beforehand, and don't eat this and don't eat that and starve for this and not for that. And I was just like, my brain
Stop coffee for 2 days and da-da-da-da.
My brain just could not compute it. And in the end, I actually did the 3 tests at different times, because originally I was going to try and do all 3 at the same like period. Like I'll do them all in the one day, finding a whole day that I could stay at home and not be interrupted to do particularly the breath test, like, because you have to do it at the increments. It was, my brain just couldn't compute it. Like I was in that deeper sense and overwhelmed that I just couldn't figure out what I needed to do it properly. And that was my other concern. I didn't want to stuff it up. Like I wanted to do it right, and I didn't want to have accidentally eaten something that would then skew the results. So that perfectionism tendency was kicking in there to make sure everything was good. And I was actually reflecting on this, and I think, you know, that whole idea of, well, everything else became before me. And so I was prioritizing all these other things before I actually prioritized getting these tests done, and therefore prioritizing myself. So that was what was really sitting behind it. And what is hilarious now, though, is that what I had to do to prepare for those tests in terms of change of diet and everything, that's my everyday lifestyle now.
It's like, that's just who I am now. That's cool, though. There's 3 things in that. And I'm going to share this in case there's people, whether they're clients who work with us or someone else who might be like having a lab test there sitting. So it's like, break it down into, you don't have to do everything all at once. What else did you say? There was something else.
They're doing it properly.
They're doing it properly, the perfectionism. So here's a good thing, is that if you do it wrong, the lab test will flag it and they'll just send out another lab kit.
Oh, that'd be nice to know.
That would have been nice
oh my
to
God,
know.
I ate a grape.
Yeah. Yeah. Or sometimes there might be something like that and it's like, just ask, like, I had a grape, is that okay? And usually I will say, like, if it was one little grape, it'll be fine. So it's those perfectionism tendencies that can prevent us from doing a thing. And then the big one was prioritizing everyone else but yourself, which was part of the whole healing journey, which we'll dig into as well. Okay, so we kind of segued. So do you remember what showed up on your lab tests?
Yes. So adrenal fatigue, which was really no surprise. It was just kind of more a validation.
Yeah.
What was interesting from that, though, from my perspective, is like how depleted I actually was. Like, I just thought you had cortisol and it dipped down, but like it was the DHEA was gone as well. Like everything was just flatlining. And I think you actually said to me, oh, you're in stage 3. And you're like, no, we're going to go back and we're going to say stage 2, because if you're in stage 3, you shouldn't be getting out of bed. And I'm like, that's that willpower kicking in. Like I can just push through this stuff. Like, here we go. So that was
sometimes having the lab actually, it's like validating, but it's also like, oh, and if I continue pushing, like where else can it go? Like it can continue getting worse, but then at some point there is no willpower left anymore, and the body will say it for you.
Yeah. And I think that was the thing for me. Like I had been going and I'd seen these other people going, oh, I've got adrenal fatigue, or I've ended up in hospital with exhaustion. I've done this. I'm like, well, my body hasn't collapsed on me yet. Like there must be more in the tank. Like it was like I know it's ridiculous, but I'm just like, I didn't have this permission to be able to slow down or stop or do things differently, because I didn't see a good enough reason. Like there was not enough evidence for me to say that I couldn't keep doing things the way that I was doing them. Like I knew that I was tired, I knew that I was exhausted, but there just didn't seem to be this reason. Like my body hadn't given up. So like, is it just me? Like, so it was that in itself also became like that permission piece. It's like, and again, this is, we'll get to this, but it's kind of like, it was, someone else had said to me, you can do this now. And then I had an excuse. I had a reason to be able to say to my husband, I can't do that. I'm too tired and I have adrenal fatigue.
I have a label now.
I can use this. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was a big one.
Yeah.
The other things that showed up, so I had low dopamine, low serotonin. So, my brain wasn't functioning, which explains the brain fog, which made a lot of sense. It's just like I was walking around in this daze.
And the overwhelm as well, like the body's stuck in fight flight, so therefore everything is triggering, everything is scary, everything is hard.
Yeah, and you've actually got a diagram in the program that looks at the way that your stress levels go and that fight or flight, and how you're meant to sort of peak up and then come down again, and how I just basically got stuck up the top, and I was just constantly bouncing in this really narrow kind of realm, but in overwhelm and overstress all the time. So everything triggered me, and I couldn't get out of that space, and no amount of relaxation or whatever, yoga, whatever I was doing was just not enough to be able to get me back into that parasympathetic state. Like I could not access it. So that was a big one. And I found that really difficult because I was trying, like I was seeing acupuncturists and I was going to yoga, and, I wasn't meditating at that time, but I was doing, I had a coach and all these sorts of things, trying to mentally work my way out of this. And I think that was another big thing. Yeah. Sorry, I'm jumping all over the place on you now.
No. This is awesome. It's good because everything will thread together. So then there was also the SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth that showed up.
Which was the first thing that I actually went to you for, because it was just, the gut pain was horrendous. And I got referred on to see a gastroenterologist, and they did an endoscopy and a colonoscopy and basically sent me home and said, there's nothing wrong with you, it's all in your head.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And to a point it was all in my head, but their approach did not help. It was not a helpful directive. And the conversation I'd actually had with them was that SIBO didn't exist, so I was wasting my time and money going down that path. And then so when we got the diagnosis back to say, yes, you do have SIBO, and it was like this very high level of methane
Yep.
in my system, I went, well, no wonder.
Yeah.
And what was really surprising for me was how high that was, and I hadn't eaten because, of course, you fast for that test, and to see that level of reaction from my body was quite surprising. And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, if that's what's happening when there's nothing in there, imagine what is happening when I'm eating something.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was, and that kind of then, I think all of these things were quite validating because in a way you're going, oh, okay, it's not me. I'm not completely crazy. Like
I'm
there
not
is
just making it up.
I'm not making it up.
Yeah.
It's actually there.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then off the back of that, we also found the low microbiome. So yeah, I didn't have really good gut health as a result of, probably stress and eating poorly and the antibiotics and stuff years earlier. So that was all contributing. And then the other thing that we found was that the stage 1 liver function wasn't performing the way it should be as well.
Yeah.
So body just wasn't detoxing and cleansing the way that it should be. And that was probably contributing back to everything else because it was just dumping all this stuff back into my system.
Yeah. Yeah. And along with that too, poor bile production, which is often connected to SIBO. So if you're not producing bile and it's not squirting into the gut effectively, then essentially bile helps to break down food, but it's also a natural antibiotic. So then that allows that bacteria to travel up and stay camp when you eat your food. It ferments in the wrong place, and it's like number one symptom is severe bloating. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. I think like in terms of the physical support, I think the big focus for you, or maybe like the hardest, most challenging thing was around working on the SIBO while also working on the body systems because it's all connected. I think there's like some key learnings in your journey through treating SIBO. Are you happy to share?
Yep. Happy to share.
Okay.
So
what did that look
we
like for
start?
you? Yeah.
Oh, so we did the adrenal for support first because, as you said, can't do any healing if my adrenals weren't functioning. So we spent a bit of time sort of getting them back on track with supplements and bits and pieces. Also changing the diet. So did the adrenal diet, which pretty much is my life now. So that's worked out pretty well.
Yeah.
And then we did the shakes. So 2 weeks of living on shakes, and
It's called the elemental diet.
Yes.
No food,
14
formulated
days.
shakes. You did awesome.
I did all of it. Again, had to do it right, committing to this. And I switched between the pre-formulated elemental shake and like the made at home stuff as well, so that I had a bit of variety.
Yeah.
It's a tricky thing. I tried all 3 flavors of the elemental, and I thought the tropical was the most disgusting thing I've ever tasted in my life and wanted to gag every time I drank it. I ended up throwing out that one.
Oh no.
Yep. The chocolate.
Couldn't even reuse it later for like just in a smoothie as a bit of a protein boost. Nah. Okay.
Like that instant those things get near you. It's just like, can't handle that.
That's so funny because some people have said tropical is my favorite. The other two are gross.
No. So, it was disgusting. Whereas the homemade version was quite good because it had the honey and the coconut oil, like the MCT oil and stuff in it. So it was palatable. So I did that for the 2 weeks and felt incredible at the end of that. All the bloating had gone. Like I'd felt lighter as well. Like I had lost some weight through that process as well, but it was more about just my system felt clean, and I felt like everything had kind of moved the way it needed to. So that was great. And the brain fog had lifted, and I was a lot clearer. The emotional stuff had gone. I was a lot more even tempered. Things were still going a lot better. So a huge, huge shift there. But a couple of months later, been through a bit of a stressful period, had a few things that didn't quite go the way that I'd hoped them to go, and voila, SIBO was back. So we retested, and we found that, yes, it was back, but it wasn't as high as it was the first time around. So we did another 7 days on the elemental diet then, and I only did the chocolate for the whole 7 days. And I think that was enough to kind of make it better.
Yeah.
I'm still not convinced it's gone completely. Like I think it sort of flutters in and out, that one. So we're just exploring other ways to kind of get that under control now. So
Yeah.
as you know, I've started trying colonics to see if that's going to help. But yeah, it's an interesting one, that one.
I think I lost session, which was just last week. I think there was some learnings too that it's like, oh, I can see like there's a big stress factor in this now.
Yeah.
So when it flared back up the big time, like a few months later, there was some actual quite intense stress happening around that time.
Yep.
But then what you said to me too, it's like, oh, I notice, if I'm starting to feel those subtle signs of like anger towards the kids or, whatever it might be, the gut will also communicate too. So the way that I think about that as well, it's like, yeah, you know what, like we could run a test and actually see if SIBO's still there or not. Like even if it is kind of like a physiological thing that it's kind of like, you know what, I'll just rear my little head every now and then. When you listen, then it doesn't eventuate into something bigger. And so it then becomes this beautiful communication pathway that it's like, it's actually like, it's not specifically the SIBO, it's actually just a way that your body and unconscious mind is communicating to you to get your attention.
It's just reminding me to calm down and take a breath and, take a rest and maybe look after myself a little bit better, or, maybe those, you've crept off course a little bit with some of the food choices and things like that. So, I think it's definitely a communication tool now. And one of the things that I've sort of because I've been reading a lot more into it as well, just to see what else is going on. And this idea that our intestines and our stomach and everything are digesting ideas and emotions and things as well. It's not just digesting food. So what else am I overloading my system with in terms of emotion and other things that I'm not effectively clearing, and allowing it to kind of shift and move from my body? So I think there's a few different ways that you can kind of look at it and see where things are coming from. And particularly like stress is just really another emotion. So how am I finding other ways to kind of manage that and support that so that that whole load isn't on my stomach?
Yeah.
Oh my gut.
Yeah, I love it. Did you want to add anything, Chris, before we move on? Chris is like got a lot of notes.
Got notes? Okay.
He's got notes.
Just in summary, I'm just following your story. Life happens. Somewhere along the line, you become aware symptoms are popping up here and there, and then you try. You give it a crack. You either try and willpower it out, push along. I'm not dead yet. Keep going. I haven't completely broken down. I'm not bedridden. And you give it a crack. You try, and then you go, all right, well, let me try the doctor route. No, you're normal. See, SIBO doesn't exist. Blah 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 blah. But you don't feel right. You don't feel normal. You don't feel good. So you try and find other options. Blah 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 blah. And then I think underneath all of that, there's still these patterns, there's these programs, there's these stories that you're telling yourself. And I think that's where we're up to right now. It's like just let's
go into the metaphysical, the deeper, what we call the root cause. Yeah. So in our Ending Body Burnout Method, we're working on the physical body systems, but on the other side, you can't separate the mind and the body. It's like, it's actually impossible. And so wouldn't it be a lovely thing to do to just heal both at the same time, because they're both communicating with each other and they're both affecting each other. So on the metaphysical side of things, or the mind, we have a part of the program called Spark, which is really getting to what's the deepest root cause happening here. And we take our clients through the journey of really getting to a deep root cause unconscious core belief first and foremost, because that's essentially the machine that's driving everything. And then looking at, past events and trauma and like repressed emotion and uncovering, rewiring, reprogramming, clearing all of that. What was your experience? What did you discover about yourself?
Oh, okay. So it was really quite interesting, that whole process, because there were activities and things that you got us to do that really started making me think about things from a different perspective. But I also think there was some conversations that we had that helped me realize that the way that I wanted to do things differently was okay. And so one of the biggest thing is, we go through, and my deepest core belief was that I'm insignificant, that, I don't matter. And so what that had done for me in terms of how that showed up for me in my life was that I would overwork, I would people please, I would do everything for everybody in order to get that external validation to prove that I was significant and that I did matter and that I was valuable and people did need me. And so I think that's, and you talk about it, it's always serving you. And that was serving me. Like I was busting my butt, running a business, successful career, really successful business, working with great clients, delivering for them, but always over delivering, always saying yes, feeling really bad if I had to say no because it was completely out of my control. Like feeling responsible was a big one for me. Is like I take on a sense of responsibility that I've got to deliver on it. And if I say I'm going to do something, I've got to do it. So, but I would never say no. It was always a yes.
Yeah.
And so that was a really big thing for me, and never putting or saying, hey, I need this, to be able to just, constantly always over-serving and overdoing in order to get that validation that I was significant. And so that was there.
Which actually circles back to how you started off talking about the lab test. It's like, took a while to do it. But, underneath all of that was I was prioritizing everyone else and not myself. And so these simple little things, like these deeper beliefs, will ripple into every facet of life, including, it's really weird that I've got this test kit sitting here. Why haven't I done it yet? But even that alone too, what was the thing that it's just like, all right, just going to flame and get these lab tests done? Like, was there something where the pain just got high enough that it's like, going to do it now?
I don't know if it was the pain. I just got sick of looking at them because I was sitting right here beside me all the time. They're taking up space on my desk, and I blocked it out in my diary. And that was the thing though too. I'd had to look ahead that far to be able to go, okay, I can spend this whole block of time that I haven't got to do something with the kids. I haven't got meetings. I haven't got this. I haven't got something else that's a deadline delivered. I can carve this time out for myself and do it. And that's just how long it took me to eventually get that together and then work through it. And because I then broke it down, it's like, I'm going to do this 3 times now. So and just like I said earlier, just like the capacity in my brain to be able to read the instructions and understand them all separately. It was just too much for my brain to handle at the time.
Yeah.
Well, that's a pain. It's a pain to keep looking at the damn thing.
I know. It was
pain. There's a pain there.
That could be a tip for somebody whose career is around organization and, I don't know, you've not said this word, but neatness, and tidiness, having a purpose and a place for everything. Slapping some sort of ugly lab test in the flaming front and center in the wrong spot might be a strategy for somebody.
That would work.
Yeah.
That's so true.
Slap it in the middle of the kitchen counter and don't touch it.
Yeah. It's just
Something
frustrating.
But also too then that decision is like you're starting to collect evidence, whether you know consciously or not, but someone will start collecting evidence that's like, you know what, I do matter. Like, and I do matter enough to do this thing and to then do these shakes and then, to actually peer into the box of worms that, maybe I do or don't want to do, but I know that's the most loving and kind thing I can do for myself. Yeah. So every time you make a choice, like every time you say yes to yourself, like in the past, it's like, it's like getting you to where you want to be. So what did it look like for you in terms of rewiring, reprogramming? And I know that you're actually someone, it's very rare that I can see someone kind of like straddle and hold space for quite a few different modalities without it feeling more overwhelmed and distracting. Like you actually, so you worked with us, but you were doing other stuff. You were almost like, if I'm going to solve this, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to like do all of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So are you happy to share, you know, we can go into like the TRTP trauma therapy and stuff as well. Like what were the big things that made a big difference that got you out of your mental, because you kind of like knew what you had to do, but in terms of the embodiment and actually clearing this baggage from the unconscious mind, what made the biggest difference for you?
I think that's a really good point what you just made there too, is you know what you need to do. You just don't do it, or you in theory know what needs to be done, but you don't practically know how to actually apply it. And it's that embodiment piece, and I'm learning that more and more and more as I go, because I can talk about it and I can speak to it, but until you actually do it and experience it, you don't really get it and you don't really understand it. And so the things that I was doing throughout this process was I was working with a business coach as well, and she's actually a psychologist, so that was like double bonus.
Yeah.
And a lot of the stuff that I was working through with her was just calling me out on my own shit, really, like just saying, is that true? What else could that, you know, what else could be true? And really kind of holding me to account. And there was a lot of times I wanted to absolutely punch her in the face, and she knew that.
I've experienced that as the like on the receiving end.
You know, you're very thankful for them holding this space and asking these questions, but in the time it's like, just leave me alone. But you do
let me continue my dysfunctional patterns and pretend it's okay.
I like being angry and cranky at the world for the shit that I'm doing to myself. Like, let me.
Yep.
Yes, playing the victim is very good. And she just wouldn't have a bar of it, which is great. But it would take me time to go and think about that and reflect on it, and then come back and go, actually, you're right, this is what I need to do. So there's a lot of that going on at the same time. In addition to that, I also went to a retreat. So I've been working with this lovely lady called Amber Hawken for about 5 years. I've known Amber, and she has a retreat called Alchemy Rites, and I've never wanted to go. Like, I've been terrified, like absolutely shit scared of going to this retreat, because people cry and they have big emotions and they have all this stuff come up. And I'm like, I'm not ready for that. And then eventually, it was actually when I started working with you, I actually said to her about a month later, I'm in. So before I'd even done the lab test, I'd said to her, right, I'm coming. Like, I'm in, let's do this. This is the year. I'm fixing me. I'm off. And so I booked in to go. I was actually meant to go to her retreat in March, but unfortunately she had some personal issues and had to postpone it, and it didn't happen until September. And
it actually probably worked out great time-wise.
It was perfect. Like, I would not have got the outcome from this collective experience if I had done it in March, because I hadn't done the work that had actually helped me uncover so much about myself through doing the Ending Body Burnout program. So one of the big things that came out for me during that was like this massive aha moment, was how much I will tiptoe around other people and make myself wrong or go out of my way to keep them happy and comfortable. I will put everyone else's kind of emotions above my own. And I realized that what I was doing was I was taking responsibility for how everyone else felt. And it wasn't until we had some coaching sessions and we talked it through, and I went, actually, that's not my responsibility. Like, my responsibility is to make sure that I'm taking care of me and, you know, I'm not being a jerk and all the rest of it. But at the end of the day, like, if I can't do something and that person gets upset about it, that's their stuff, not my stuff. And so it was learning that. And so that was a really big kind of light bulb for me. And then changing that dynamic has been interesting, because how people respond to that now is
new can of worms, new problems to solve.
New problems to solve. So there was a lot of that stuff that kind of came up for me. And so by the time that I got to her retreat, like, it was there was a lot that had been unpacked, and I felt open and receptive and ready.
Yeah.
And I was right. Her retreat is not for the faint-hearted. So it's intense. There's like primal ritual, there's sweat lodges, there's breath work, there's lots of deep, deep, uncomfortable conversations in a group setting there was 24 women there together having these conversations. And as confronting and challenging as it was deeply, deeply healing. And I left that retreat with this newfound capacity. I felt like I had shifted so much stagnant energy and emotion and just baggage that I had been carrying for such a long time. I just got to let it go, like it was gone. And I came home from that retreat and I sat on my floor for 2 weeks and tried to make sense of the world and what was going on and who I was and where I was going and what did this mean for me, and kind of had to, the lady that went to the retreat and the lady that came home are two very different people, and had to kind of make new sense of the world. So that was that. And that was happening right in the middle of the TRTP therapy that we were doing as well. So I did my first one before I went, and the next two when I got back. And again, timing was absolutely perfect. So when I got back, we went and we did the second 2 sessions, and I think that was just that last little tipping point that I needed to kind of break that free and really kind of release everything that I had been carrying, like all of this emotional baggage and these stories that had shaped so much of me for so long. And the bit that really resonated for me and stuck out for me at the end of it was the amount of internal capacity and vitality that I felt after this. And I remember saying to some girlfriends, is like, I always used to think that this pressure and this overwhelm and all of these demands and everything that was coming at me and just making me feel trapped and suffocated and like it was all just too hard was coming from outside. And it wasn't until I had cleared all of this through all of this work that I now had this capacity and this spaciousness and this easefulness in my life, and nothing outside of me had changed. Absolutely nothing. It was all inside. And it just made me realize how much room this stuff takes up without you actually knowing. And both physically in your body and mentally in your head, like it's just there looping constantly. And until it was gone, I've got this newfound capacity, which is incredible.
I remember we had a conversation about that, and it might have been before we started TRTP or that first session, before you really like went into the unconscious mind and, in all the different modalities that you were doing to clear everything. But I remember saying to you, and I don't think you believed me. I think you had hope, but I'm like, I promise that when you have sufficiently rewired, let go of this baggage from the past and these stories and beliefs, that because we were talking about busyness and the patterns, and I said, look, you might not actually change anything in terms of like what you're actually doing as in an output, but you will change inside of yourself, and you will feel relaxed and flowful and cruisy, and nothing outside of you might not need to change. I mean, some things might need to change, and you're like, okay, well, when I experience that, I'll believe it. And then I remember like a couple of weeks later, you're like, I'm experiencing it now. Yeah, this feels like magic, but it's real.
Yeah, no, I thought you were completely full of it. I thought, how is this even possible?
Yes.
Because, and like, I think I was trying to say something earlier, was around when I started this and I found out that I had, adrenal fatigue and all these other things. I'm like, oh, great. Okay. So what does that mean my life needs to look like? Do I need to like work less? Do I need to do this? And I tried to work my way out of burnout, which is hilarious now, but it was like, what do I need to do? What do I need to do to change? What do I need to do this? And I started reading all these things, and I went and found all these other people that had burnout and what they did, and reached out to Ali and said, right, what is it? And like, does this keep coming back? Like, do we get rid of it? Like, how do we fix this thing? And it was, like I didn't know what I needed to do to change, to make things better. And it wasn't only you've got to go through the process. And this is what I mean when I was saying about the thing, but you've got to actually embody it. You've got to experience it. And once you've experienced it, then you just have this deep knowing, like you just know this stuff now.
Yeah.
And there was another piece of that puzzle that came through. We did the parts integration because I had this fear of money, or fear of lack of money. I'd love more money, but this fear of lack of money. And it was like, well, I have to work because work equals money and money equals life. And that process was a real eye-opener there, because the two parts that ended up showing up was, one was this steamy kind of smoky thing that kind of kept flickering and it was huge, and the other thing was this swishy, watery, kind of floaty thingamajiggy.
Yeah.
And what they kind of ended up representing to me was the fire was, well, the smoke and the steam was effectively, that was my fire burning out. Like it was snuffing out. It was going from steam and smoke and there was no flame in it. Like it was just this white mess, hot mess. And then the floaty stuff was this water and the wind, and it was this really kind of ethereal and light and happy and joyful kind of thing.
Woo and like,
It's
yay,
really
yay,
lovely
life is great. We don't need to make money.
No, like, go do whatever you like. It'll be amazing.
Meditate all day.
And I'm like, that's not real. And when we brought the two together, I ended up with a pond with a campfire sitting in it, and the wind swooshing around and circling around the top. But it was like one of those cute little campfires that you see in the cartoons with like 4 sticks and a little little flame on top of it. So it was kind of bringing that back together, and how that has continued to kind of show up and shape is that I've started to think about what finances look like in my business and how they flow, and thinking about things far more cyclically. And I think that's been a real theme for me in everything I do across the work I do in business, but also in my life, is thinking about things much more seasonally and cyclically. Like we have really big months and quarters where we are doing lots of work and lots of delivery, and then I would just keep going. Like I would have to keep doing that. And it's like, oh, I did that now. That's my new benchmark. I've got to keep going, because I don't know how many people you see on social media going, oh, I had $100,000 a month, la, la, la. Yeah. You can do this every month too. And it's like, at what cost?
Yeah.
And that was the question I started asking myself at the end of last year was, yes, but at what cost? And starting to weigh things up and starting to look at success differently and redefining what success meant for me. And because there's a cost for everything. Like you can do those 100K months, but your body's going to burn out. And so for me, it was about going and accepting that, okay, well, we're going to have some big peak seasons where I'm going to be really busy. We're going to, be bringing in lots of revenue, but then there has to be a come down from that. There needs to be months where I can rest and recuperate, and the money's not going to be as high, and to be looking at the business more holistically over a longer period of time, rather than trying to meet these targets every month. Because again, that was ingrained into me from previous companies, and how you run a business, it's every month you have to make money. So that all had to shift as well. And I mean, there's still some resistance there. It comes up and it niggles at me, and I'm like, oh no, you just have to go back in your box over there. It's okay. Like been in business for 12 years now, I know that there are ups and downs and goods and bads, and you've just got to be able to ride the wave. So,
And like connecting that back to the deep healing work that you did as well. So then therefore, when you now know that you're significant, regardless of how much money you have or don't have, or how successful your business is or not, or how well behaved your children are or not, it actually makes it safe to like actually surrender into the seasons and into this cyclical nature of whether it's like business and money or like parenting or whatever it is, because it's like I'm okay because I have my own back, and I know that all will be fine, and being able to just relinquish yourself into that. It's so freeing.
It is. And I'm not saying it's easy. Like I still have to kind of script that to myself and tell myself that. And I've got some little, prompts now that remind me that it's okay, because you can get into that downward spiral really quickly. I've been doing this for 40 plus years now. Like that's what my brain tells me, is that it has to be this way. So it's kind of, I know differently now, and I can choose differently. And that's what I keep reminding myself.
Yeah. And that's kind of the difference too. So, I can't remember who said this, but you can't control the birds flying around your head, but you can control if they're nesting in it. And that can be the same with like old thought patterns or,
Yeah.
like patterns from the past that, you know what, they probably will pop up way less intensely than and with less frequency after you've done the work and you continue communicating with yourself. But then it's like it's just strengthening the new neural pathways every time they pop up. Do you let them nest or do you just allow them to fly off again?
Yeah. That's a
Yeah.
really nice analogy. I like that one.
Thank you.
Keep that.
Thank you. Okay, so just circling full circle back to, and as you were talking about business and finances, how does it look different for you, life and also your business and your profession, because you are embodying everything that you have learnt, and as a natural, like the proof is always in the pudding. When someone truly embodies, it's going to ripple out into other areas of their life.
Yeah.
So how does business look like for you now?
Business looks great. So we were able to start reconfiguring our business. So for the last sort of 3-4 years, I have had this dream of how I wanted my business to look. And towards the end of last year, we finally kind of recrafted community. So community is the workplace strategy, design studio, change leadership. And we had previously been doing a lot of like the design, the documentation, the delivery piece, which is like the hands-on, actually doing the work and kind of building the thing. But that's not a place that really lights my fire anymore. I'm really much more about the strategy and helping the business move forward and creating the space for the people and thinking about it in a bigger picture and coming up with this brand alignment. And like there's all of these moving parts in that. But I also wanted to stay involved across that delivery process because there's critical decisions that get made through that process, and they can get made really easily without understanding the knock-on effect and the implications of what that might have in terms of the strategy and how that can change things. And then also being really involved in onboarding people, because historically we build an office and we go, here's the key, see you later. And people just move in and, they do their thing. But with the way that workplaces are shifting, and particularly with hybrid work and, remote workforces, there's a real shift in behavior that needs to come with it. And for these workplaces to perform at their optimum level, we need to be educating and training people on how to use the space, but also on how to work differently. And so a lot of that is them understanding and getting comfortable with change, and what does change look like, and what's the neuroscience of change, and how am I going to react to it, and how's my team going to react to it, and what can we do as leaders to support people through this. And that's the stuff that absolutely lights my fire. And so by the end of last year, we had been able to build that business. We've delivered a number of projects for different clients under that exact model, and it's just been magic. So the business finally landed where it wanted. And it was actually when I was at the retreat with Amber, I said to, hey, how we mapped out this business plan years ago, I'm like, it's happened. The only bit that hasn't happened is the business coaching. And she said to me, you need capacity to be able to hold space for other people. And that's all she said, and she walked away. I'm like,
right. Thank you.
that made sense. And so it was at the end of the retreat, I went, oh, I've got this capacity now. Like it's there. I literally can feel this space now. And I've gone on and I'm doing my meditation practitioner training, which is actually more about looking at how we store and hold trauma in the body, and how through presence and contact and meditation we can help shift and release that. So journeys all sort of tying back beautifully there together. And so
nice.
as we've sort of come into 2025, I've ramped up my business coaching side of the business again. So we've done a business planning day in January where 12 beautiful women came, and we did a full strategic planning day. And that was all integrated with meditation. And I did this heart-centered and sort of energy-centered connected meditation visualization to really get them to feel that fire in their belly again, and to reconnect with that passion that they had for their business and bring that to life. And that's where they did their intention and goal setting from through that day. And doing more one-to-one coaching with other amazing business women, VIP days. I've launched Brunch Club, which is cool. So
That's awesome.
it's just a casual networking group for women to come together once a month and connect. But the big one is hosting a retreat in October, which I'm like so excited about, because this retreat has been on the vision board for years, but I literally just haven't had the capacity. And I pulled out my original, like I do like little manifestation scripting of what I want it to look like. And I found it the other day when I was going through my strategy stuff. And it is exactly what's happening. The only thing is there is no wine. So the retreat is alcohol free.
Nice. I like it.
Whereas before there was wine around the campfire. We're not having wine now, but everything
kombucha.
Else having cacao or something, you know.
Oh yeah, ceremonial cacao.
Yeah. So it's it's really cool. And
is that targeted for business women or
business women? And the intention behind that was that I wanted to create a space where women who I was seeing in my corporate life, my friends, my colleagues, my clients, who I see all those warning signs in them now that I was experiencing, like they're just on the verge of having a meltdown, or they're just overwhelmed, or they're trying to juggle all the things, or, you know, the kids aren't sleeping, or, you know, they're running a business and, you know, they're stretched. And I just wanted to create a space where they could have just a taste of some of the things that I have experienced and that have made a massive difference to me and where I'm at. And so that's pretty much what this retreat is. It's a melting pot of all of that. So we've got meditation, we've got sound healing, we've got yoga, we've got women's wellness conversations where we're going to be talking about the seasons and cycles of life, perimenopause, adrenal fatigue. The food's all going to be this beautiful, nourishing food that's all, you know, complementary to your adrenal diet, so that we're taking that load off people's system and really just giving them a space to relax and let go. And Amber's coming and she's doing a breathwork session for us, so you'll get a little bit of her intensity, but just helping you shift some of that stagnant energy and those emotions that are stuck. But the big part about it is I want people to reconnect with themselves. So that was the biggest thing I had realized, is I had completely lost touch with myself. I had completely started to ignore my own intuition. I didn't trust myself. I didn't listen to myself. And I see that in other women, and I would love them to kind of reconnect with themselves and, you know, reconnect with that intuition and start to listen to themselves and their bodies and give them a pathway that can then help them take action. So another big part of what we'll be doing at the retreat is looking at, well, what do I actually want my ideal life to look like? You know, if I want that life, what do I need to do to make that possible? So we're doing that, but we're doing it in this beautiful place in the Tweed Valley. So nature immersion, reconnection with nature, and just lots of time to ponder and experience and sit and relax and rest and exhale.
I love it. So good. I'll make sure I pop it in the show notes. So good. I think you've just got a wait list page at the moment.
The wait list open at the moment, but won't be long, and the sales page will be up, so you'll be able to start to come and join me.
Awesome.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Your mess
So good.
is your message now, isn't it?
Yes, I love that.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's I love both of those words, mess and age. So age is like the process. It's like how many laps around the sun have you taken? So your evolution as a person, as a human, as a woman has, you know, transcended above what you were in the past. Your mess plus your wisdom that you've gained is your message.
Yeah.
I love that. I'm going to steal that too. Thank you.
Go for it. I got it from somewhere. Handball it to you.
Oh, thank you so much, Mel. This has just been so beautiful. Last question to end off. If there's anyone listening and they maybe felt like you did, overwhelmed, stuck, I don't know where else to go, or even if it's possible for me, what words of advice would you give them?
Start. The first process is doing that connect the dots, because once I did that, I then had a direction. Like before that, I was just spinning my wheels and going in circles, and had, you know, sought out doctors and had been seeing an excellent acupuncturist and everything, but it was just not, it wasn't a holistic enough approach. And I think just doing that first initial connect the dots has made the world of difference for me. The other thing I would say is trust the process and follow the course. I know a few people who have done the connect the dots but haven't gone through the program, and I feel for them because I know that
Yeah.
they're not getting there. Like they're just going, oh yeah, did that, took the thing and off I went again. And it's like, yeah, you got to dig. You got
The
to dig.
things will come back.
Yeah, they will.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it's like even I've spoken to another person, like, and she hasn't been in the course or anything, but she's like, oh yeah, no, I've got all of that stuff, locked in a suitcase, put in the basement. It's like down there. And I went, see how long that stays there.
The body will speak.
Yes. Oh, because I have a theory. I'll share my theory with you. Is that I believe that women in their 40s have just been smothering this stuff for so long that it gets to a point where it can no longer be smothered and it erupts. And it erupts in a brilliant fashion and you just can't ignore it.
Yeah.
Like,
we see that too. I'd actually say most of our clients are like both men and women, 40s. And then sometimes 50s, 60s, and it's just like, I am like so ready to let this go now. Yeah. But it's also perimenopause. So if your stress, which is like especially all this stuff that you repress, is going to affect your nervous system, which then affects your adrenals, which then affects your female hormones. And so even if you've gone along okay in terms of hormones in the past, or even if not, things are going to like be disrupted when your hormones start to drop, and that's often where this deeper unconscious baggage stuff is like it's really like this unheard part of you is finally ready to scream and to be heard. Yeah.
No, I agree with that. So I think it's just there. And so the retreat's very much focused at those lovely women in their 40s who are starting to see this stuff.
Yeah.
And not really knowing what to do with it.
Yeah. So awesome. Thank you. I just love your energy. And as I said before, like I do, my experience of you, completely different woman compared to a year ago. And it's so beautiful that everything that you have embodied is rippling out to helping other people as well.
Thanks, guys. And look, I have to say thank you to you guys because this person here would not be here if it hadn't been for, the opportunity to find you and work with you and go through the process as well. Like this would not be possible. So you're a big part of that journey as well. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Really. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you. Alrighty. Well, thanks everybody for joining us and we'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much for listening. We so appreciate you. If you'd like to give us extra smiles, drop us a review and spread the love by sharing this episode.
You can also rate your own state of burnout and the root cause contributors by taking our Ending Body Burnout Assessment on our website. And if you're interested in learning about our group or one-on-one Ending Body Burnout programs, shoot us a DM via Instagram or Facebook.
Have the best day ever.